Hey guys, so I've been getting a lot of questions about how I process my time lapses. I wanted to show you guys a really quick and easy way to process your time lapses when you don't need to ramp. So when there's not a huge change in dynamic range. Basically, when you use something like LR time lapse, you have to export to like a TIFF or JPEG intermediary. It takes fucking forever. And as long as you don't need that ramping, let's say you have just like a lot of cloud movement, or even when you're doing astrolapses and the exposure is staying relatively constant, you can get away by just importing the raw sequences directly into After Effects. So that's what I'm going to show you. Hey guys, it's Akash. I'm going to show you how I quickly process a time lapse. So what I'm going to do is open up After Effects. I'm going to go to Import, File, and then I'll get to the folder where I have my time lapse, and I'll click the first image on the sequence. And I want to make sure camera raw sequence is selected, and then I'll hit open. So it opens up basically the camera raw, and it'll apply any of the edits to the rest of the files in the sequence. So as you can see, I'm clipping here a little bit. So what I'll do is bring down the highlights, and that's not going to get everything. So what I'm going to do is bring down the exposure a little bit, then pump the shadows up. For the whites, I'm going to hold Option, and I'm going to keep pushing it up until I see that first little spot that has a highlight, which is right in the middle there. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the black point, and bring it down until I see just a little more than just the beginning of where the clipping starts. I'm going to push the shadows a little more, and maybe adjust the highlights or the exposure so it's a little bit higher. All right, that looks pretty good. Now, one of the things I like to do is go into camera calibration, and this is a little trick I learned from this amazing landscape photographer, Ted Gore, and I'll post a link to his website in my description. What he likes to do is push the blue primary channel, the saturation up. You know, what happens here, if you look, is it's not really pushing completely the blue. If you look at the green colors in the image, they're also getting richer. Basically, it's finding any of the blue data that's in any of the colors and bringing up the saturation there. And this is more truly a representation of what the sky actually looked like on that day. So I'm going to bring it probably pretty high up there. You see how it brings a lot more richness into the colors and a little more saturation into the sky as well, without me having to mess with the saturation at all. Also, what I'll do is go into the lens corrections, make sure I enable profile corrections, remove chromatic aberration. And then finally, I'll do a little sharpening here, and I'll apply it. So if I go to masking, if I hold Option, I only want to apply that. I don't want it to happen to the clouds, basically. So that looks pretty good right there. So now what masking is doing when I'm holding Option or Control on a Windows computer, it's allowing me to select where that sharpening is going to be applied to. So at this point, it's applying it to everything. At this point, it's applying it to just the very smallest amount of edge detail. I want it to be probably like right around there. Maybe I'll bring it down a little bit. Excuse me. So a couple other things you can do before you get into After Effects is, let's say I want to do a little split toning here. If I wanted to make my highlights a certain color, maybe make them a little warmer. Make my shadows, let's say I want some blue in the shadows. I can adjust the balance as such. In this case, I think I'm going to leave it alone. So there's the before, there's the after. One last thing I'll do is bring up the clarity a little bit and just the vibrance a touch. Alright, so that looks good to go. When I hit OK, it'll bring that into After Effects, that whole sequence. But if you notice here, it says 30 frames per second, so we want to change that. So if I right click and go to Interpret Footage, main. I'm going to assume the frame rate of 23.976. Okay. Then I'll right click that and go new comp from selection. Once this loads, you'll notice that I want to output my final time lapse as 4K. So if we go right now, if we go to composition settings, it's going to use the full size, which is ridiculously, it's more than 8K right now. I want to change that composition size to Ultra HD, 3840 by 2160. All right, now if you notice, really zoomed in, right, because we're using a 43 megapixel file. So what we can do is go to transform, scale, we'll bring that down. So right at 49% for this image seems to fit it. One thing I can do, because I have such a large image and my delivery is only in 4K, is I can do some zooms, some basically some post moves that sort of mimic maybe like a motion control slider would have in the field. So what I'll do is I actually will want to start maybe a little zoomed in, maybe like 80%. Let's say I want to start over here by the waterfall. Right, so that's where I'm going to start at. Then I'm going to hit the keyframe button on position and also on scale. Then I can set my ending point. So I'll go to the very end of the composition, and let's say I want to pull it back out to 49%. Then I'll readjust the positioning. Alright, so basically that's going to start off, we'll zoom into 90% on that waterfall, and it's going to end, it's going to do sort of a zoom out, and it's going to show the whole scene. And that's pretty much all I need to do for this. So now what I'm going to do is go to File, Export, add to Adobe Media Encoder Q, wait for it to come up here. I'm going to do I wanted to do in ProRes 422 HQ, match the source, use maximum depth, maximum render quality, set my export location. We'll call it Washburn Lapse. And let it go. Thank you guys for checking out this video. I hope you're able to gain something from it. I'm going to be doing a more advanced time-lapse processing tutorial here soon, so look out for that. Hit the subscribe button if you liked it, and feel free to ask me any questions you have in the comments. Thanks.